Hey everybody, it's LavenderTowne, and today we're going to be adding progressively more detail and complexity to a simple character design until it completely falls apart. As you can see, we're starting with Garfield, which I think is perfect because I feel like this very simple cat design has really stood the test of time. Garfield has been in comic strips for decades now, and you're still seeing his face. The Garfield movie is happening. It's just a very, very successful character design. So the first thing I wanted to do is just do a 20% boost in detail and complexity on this character. That's mostly going to be things like adding more like little stylized elements and complicating simple shapes, like the little whiskery things that are right below his ears. We're going to curl them. I'm going to show a little more fur texture on his perfectly round head, and we're just going to gradually be adding more and more as the video goes on. Now in this one I wanted it to still be pretty close to our original Garfield, so he's still in the same pose and he's got the same expression, but we're adding on this sort of like foiled eye kind of thing on the top of his eyelids, and I'm also adding a few new places where that secondary color that's on his mouth appears on his belly and on the tip of his tail. I feel like that also makes sense for a slightly more complex character design. Usually you would see the secondary color in more places than just one. Now, when we start our 50%, I really want to start to amplify things. We're going to start changing the overall shape of him and also altering his pose and everything. I think that this classic pose of him crossing his arms away from his face so that you focus on his face is so iconic and very simple. So now we're going to like move those arms away from the body and make it more complex and a more wild silhouette. I wanted to add heterochromia on him because, of course, I feel like this is a hallmark of a complex like OC or character design, and it's one of those things that I feel like young artists really get encouraged away from because it's so tantalizing when you're first getting into art and character design to give your character two different colors of eyes. We're going to add that for our 50%, if that gives you any idea about how elaborate things are about to get. I also gave him a little devil wing with piercings on it. This was my absolute kryptonite when I was designing OCs when I was in my teens, so I had to. And then we're having two different orientations of fangs in his mouth, one going up, one going down. Well, two going down actually. It gives him kind of like a wild junkyard cat kind of look, which I like. The whole design for the 50% kind of comes from the fact that his feet are just so enormous. Like if you look at them compared to his ankles, it looks insane. It looks like he's wearing clown shoes, but they're just biological. Like he's just built like that. So to lean into that silhouette with our shoed and clothed version of him, I decided to give him these like giant sort of stompy kind of goth or punk shoes, like a Doc Marten kind of thing, and that helped inform the rest of his design for 50%. I wanted him to look like a little punk Garfield, so I gave him a little battle jacket, with the torn off sleeves and also all the patches and stuff. You can barely see it, but I gave him a little crossed out Mondays patch, as well as something that's sort of kind of supposed to look like lasagna. And I also tried to make his color palette more complex by taking a color on the other side of the color wheel, so away from this like warm yellow and orange and into this like navy, more bluish color. The more different areas of the color wheel that you're selecting for your base character design, the more complicated it's going to feel. I think one of the reasons that Garfield feels like such a strong, simple character design is because he only has orange and yellow, and those colors are very close together on the color wheel. When you have complementary colors, it immediately amps up the complexity and the intensity of your color palette. Now we're already on to 77%. Don't ask me why I selected 77 exactly. This just feels right. And we're going to do sort of a angelic magical girl style Garfield. I feel like magical girls have such phenomenally complex character design, so I thought this would be a fun direction to go for this point in our complexing video. Right off the bat, I wanted his boots to become even more a big part of this character design. So I gave him these like thigh-high crazy chunky platform boots. And you can see I'm kind of playing around with different things I can do. My favorite part about this design is actually not very Magical Girl like at all, but it's his scarf that has both Odie and normal at the edges. I just think that that's fun, and when I try to make a really complex character design, usually I'm trying to hide all kinds of like little nods and notes to other things in the universe, so this scarf is kind of right in line with that. I decided to go a little bit more accurate to his eyeball anatomy in the original. I realized in the previous one he was looking a little less like himself because his eyes are too far apart. They're actually touching in the art style that is currently running in Garfield, so I decided to push them together even more. I think he's looking a little bit dopey in this one. I play around with it a bit, but I kind of liked having this like insanely, caricaturized, super overboard art style for this Magical Girl one. And I gave him lace as well for his little like stripes that he has. I turned them into like this sort of like pretty blobby shape. It almost looks like, I don't know, like a paint splatter or something. My favorite coloration of cat is a dilute calico, and I was thinking about that a lot when I was making this one. I also did the cardinal sin of early OC making, where I gave him a angel wing and a devil wing, and I think it just looks so wild and fun. And of course I had to give him a Magical Girl wand with a little piece of lasagna in the center. If he was a Magical Girl, I feel like lasagna would be his signature thing. And it felt very true to the genre because I feel like a lot of Magical Girls actually do have like a fruit or some kind of like sweet as their signature symbol or thing. Usually it's not something heavy and savory like lasagna, but Magical Girl Garfield just does things a little bit differently. Out of his whisker area by his ears, I decided to give him two coiling twin tails. I think it looks so cute. For some reason I've been seeing a lot of Garfield at like anime conventions and artist alleys where people are drawing him in all kinds of different ways. Of course they're drawing the little tiny palm-sized Garfield from the trailer of the Garfield movie, but I also see a lot of like Be Not Afraid, biblically accurate Garfields, and that was definitely part of the inspiration for this video. Longtime fans of the channel will also know that I started drawing with Garfield. I literally would get tracing paper and I would just trace him over and over and over, and I was obsessed with Garfield lore, like the Garfield Halloween game where you could find John's neighbor Lyman trapped in a basement. I just thought all of that was so fun and cool, and I loved that you could get a Garfield animated and like voiced screensaver that would like scream horribly on the family computer. I don't think my parents loved that, but I thought it was so cool and so fun. I also gave this Garfield a little like clear, I guess it's almost like a Care Bears type nose where there's like little sparkles in it. Is that there's some kind of 80s toy that has a clear sparkly like plastic nose, and that's kind of what I was trying to go for here. I think I kind of obscured it a little bit with the way I was doing the shading. I also wanted to amp up the complexity of the rendering on each of these Garfields just so that like it would really carry through this getting over and over and over rendered and complicated kind of thing. And I added lots and lots of shine all over on the buttons, on the little rainbow straps on the boots, and I made sure that his claws were out. He looks very pretty. Now on to our final Garfield. This is the 125% Garfield, and for this one I'm really leaning into that Be Not Afraid mythological Garfield. I'm not just going straight for the biblically accurate angel style. I've seen a lot of that and it's been done so well that I want to do kind of an alternate version of it. Of course we're still going to have the wings everywhere and we're going to have multiple eyes, but I decided to go with more of a broader mythology kind of vibe by giving our Garfield 3 different heads. The way I see it, there's no better way to overcomplicate your character than by adding extra heads. Having to design multiple faces and expressions just makes the character design insanely complicated. I also really wanted to have like a cacophony of things to look at, of focus points. This is one of the things that you learn when you're learning how to do character design, is like how to direct the eye where you want it to go. And so I want to make this character design essentially like difficult to look at because there's so much going on. I have his sharp teeth that I had before, but now you can see the gums. It's getting a little bit more 3D and wild. And I have his hands out His paws are also definitely focal points, and all the faces are as well. So this is kind of what I mean by your eye being sort of dragged all over the place. And I also wanted to give him a crazy medieval style halo on the back of his head. It's definitely getting very, very cluttered and complex. When it comes to his little stripes, I wanted to make them look a little bit like little cloud wisps. This celestial ascended Garfield is just full of details and wildness. And I gotta say, this was probably the most fun one, because really every idea that popped into my head, I was like, throw it on there, because I mean, it's supposed to be 125%. Like we have to go all out here. Just as a side note, if you decide to do this with any characters, and I recommend Snoopy, that was my second pick, honestly, but if you do them with any simple characters, please send them to me on Twitter or somewhere, like tag me, because I think that this could be a really fun art challenge. I kind of did something similar like a lot of years ago, where I stylized a character of my own over and over until she was like completely being destroyed by stylization. But this is a little different because you're adding character complexity and details, and that's like the key thing. Like you're adding new elements to the character. I do think the story of this Garfield is certainly getting more complicated. Like when you look at original Garfield, you really don't know too much about him other than his attitude and like he's a cat. And I think that works really well for a strip style comic. Like, my god, if you had to draw Ascended Garfield every day for every panel of every strip of Garfield, I think your hand would disintegrate. So it makes perfect sense. But for me, I have a secret love of these kind of like overboard, over the top character designs. It's one of the reasons why I kind of love Danganronpa's character designs, even though they're so wild, because I feel like they definitely have this kind of like shocking, cluttered effect that I am so fond of and kind of nostalgic for. I decided to use 3 different colors of orange based on the original Garfield orange. The Garfield on the left is a brighter version of it, and the Garfield on the right is a more desaturated version. And then that kind of led me to feel like they were almost like an angel and a devil on Garfield's shoulder, which is actually a mechanic in some of the strips, or I don't know if you call it like a story mechanic, but we do see angel devil Garfield in the comic strip, so that's kind of an allusion to that. And I just went totally like freeform with the coloring of the shading and stuff. I wanted it to feel almost kind of like painterly and soft compared to how clean and crisp original Garfield is. Again, this would be a complete disaster if you were printing this on newspaper. So yeah, definitely not recommended as an actual change for the strip, but I did find that it was really fun to create this sort of mesmerizing final Garfield. And there you have the final lineup. I hope you guys enjoyed this very weird video. Again, please tag me if you end up doing this yourself. Thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much to my wonderful patrons, including Colorful Ambitions, AA Ron, Viet, Raccoon Jam, Grexius, Olia, Brandon Stark, CB, Lucy Amajiki, Liv, Salty Jackrabbit, Ravenscrow, Zocelot, T-Hill Music, Jabber Dabber Doo, Kadaria, Deadly Nightshade Art, Astrofox Art, The Expressive Poker Face, Tsubaki, Cutie Pie, Kola, JJ Jade, and of course, blah 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 blah.